naztazia.com. Today I'm going to show you how to knit the basics for the absolute beginner. And you'll learn how to make this cowl. You'll find the written instructions on my website, naztazia.com. For a beginner knitter, I recommend 1 skein of Red Heart's Soft Essentials yarn and Susan Bates 10-inch knitting needles in a size US 13. The Soft Essentials yarn is beautiful and is a perfect thickness for learning how to knit. But any of Red Heart's other bulky weight, shown as a number 5 on the label, will also work. I recommend a pair of size 13 knitting needles that look like this. It's helpful to have a crochet hook on hand when knitting. A hook helps fix knitting accidents like drop stitches. You'll want to have on hand a yarn needle like this one, with a large eye so that you can easily fit yarn through it when weaving in ends or sewing a seam. I also like a pair of good, sharp scissors. The first concept to learn in knitting is called casting on. This process puts the yarn onto the needle in the form of loops. You can see how I've cast on 10 loops here. I find this is the easiest for beginners. Lay down your 2 knitting needles on the table like this. Next, take the yarn, put it underneath the needles, and basically tie them together with the yarn. A single loop is fine. That is counted as your first cast on loop. You might have to adjust it a bit. Holding the needles in your right hand, make a thumbs up sign with your left hand. Wrap the yarn around your thumb like this. Now, take your needles and put both of them under the yarn. Release your thumb. That is cast on loop number 2. Wrap the yarn around your thumb again. Insert both of the needles together under the loop. Release your thumb. Sometimes that tail end gets in the way. Wrap around your thumb again. Insert your needles up and into the loop. Here is the process again. And again. This takes a lot of practice. Be sure to rewind the video as many times as you need to figure this part out. Now, I have 10 loops cast onto my knitting needles. Pull 1 knitting needle out so you have your 10 loops just on 1 needle. Those loops are a little loose, but it's easier to work that way. The next concept to learn in knitting is called the knit stitch. This is one of 2 main stitches in knitting. Take your knitting needle and hold it in your left hand this time. Take your right needle that is empty and hold it like this. Now, insert your knitting needle into the loop this way. Try to hold both needles with your left hand. Wrap the yarn around your needle. Push down. And try to catch that loop. Now we're going to push off that older loop. You have just knit one stitch. Insert the right hand needle into the left stitch. Try to hold both needles with your left hand. Then wrap the yarn around your right hand needle this way. Push down on your needle and use the tip to scoop up the loop. Push the old loop off. And again. Insert your needle into the loop. Hold the needles. Take your yarn end and wrap it around the needle. Push down on the tip. And try to scoop up the new loop with the tip of your needle. Now, push the old loop off. And here is the process again. Wrap, push, scoop, push. At some point, you might try holding the yarn between your first two fingers like this. It will make wrapping the yarn much easier. Insert your needle. Wrap the yarn. Scoop the new loop with the tip. Push off the old loop. Insert. Wrap, scoop, and push. You can lightly tug on the yarn end if you need, since sometimes the loops will come off the needle a little loosely. Three more stitches to go. Please note, this is difficult to hold both needles and do all of these movements. It will take a lot of practice to get this correct. Once completed, you can move the stitches around a bit. Place the needle with the stitches in the left hand again. Here is our second row of knitted stitches. I've just completed knit stitch number 1 on row number 2. Here is the second knit stitch completed. And here is the third knit stitch. After a while and with a lot of practice, you will find a good rhythm to making these stitches. Here is my last knit stitch for row 2. To begin row 3, place your needles like this. Start all over again with your knit stitches. As you can see, sometimes those loops try to escape from my knitting needle. Very soon I will show you how to fix those loops in case one of them accidentally falls off your knitting needle. Keep practicing for at least 10 rows or more. Loops sometimes drop off your needle. It's easy to put some back on. However, if one completely comes undone, this is where your crochet hook helps. Just pull it through the loop and place it back onto the knitting needle. Multiple rows of knit stitch is known as the garter stitch. If you have made it this far, congratulations. If not, just keep practicing. This next part is called casting off or binding off, which means taking the loops off the knitting needle once you are finished knitting. To do this, we're going to knit the first 2 stitches. Now, with your finger, grab that first loop and place it over the second loop. Knit 1 more stitch. Same as before. Pull the first loop over the second loop. Knit 1 more stitch. Pull the first loop over the second loop. This is just one method of casting off. In knitting, there are many more ways. However, I find this method the easiest for beginners. Be sure to subscribe to my channel so you can get updates of new knitting videos where I will show you many more tips and tricks of knitting. And here is our last loop. Cut the yarn end. Pull out the needle and pull the strand through. Here is your knitted sample. We will now weave in those ends. Take your yarn needle and push the yarn through the eye. Take small stitches here and there to weave in that tail end. After 5 or 6 stitches, cut the remaining yarn. Repeat the process for this other tail end. There's no right or wrong way to do this. Here is your finished garter stitch sample. The next stitch I want to show you is called the purl stitch. To do the purl stitch, first cast on 10 loops and knit 1 complete row. To begin the purl, insert your needle into the first loop. Try to keep that yarn in the front. Wrap it around the needle and then pull the needle's tip backwards this way. Scoop that new loop and push off that old loop. Next stitch. Insert your needle this way. Wrap the yarn around like this. Pull back the needle and scoop the loop. Push off the old loop. I'll show you this again. Wrap, push, and push off. Purl stitches are a bit more difficult to make than the knit stitch, but as anything, with practice, you will figure it out. You can tug on the yarn end as needed to tighten the loops a little. You don't want them too tight, but you don't want them very loose either. Insert, wrap, push back, push off. You can see the little V's that are formed. The very next row needs to be a knit row. So I'm going to knit all of the stitches in this row. The next row needs to be a purl row. Keep that yarn in the front and make your purl stitches. Insert, wrap, push, and push off. The biggest challenge you will have is holding 2 needles at once while making all of these stitches, but you will get it with practice. Alternating knit and purl rows is called the stockinette stitch. With the stocking stitch, you can use the knit method I showed you before for casting off or taking off the stitches to complete the work. If you've made it through, congratulations! It's time to knit an essential beginner cowl. You can use 1 skein of yarn, or if you want the stripes like mine, use 2 colors. Size US 13 needles, yarn needle, and scissors are important. First, we're going to cast on 17 loops using the method I showed you before. If you are making a solid color cowl, just make the knit stitch for 112 rows. However, if you are doing the striped version, we're going to knit with the blue for 14 rows first. And you remember the knit stitch that we did before. Back and forth for 14 rows. When you have completed the 14 rows, you can change colors simply by tying on the new color of yarn. Then cut the old color yarn. Insert your needle to make knit stitches and just use the new color of yarn for your work. Ultimately, you need 112 rows of knitted stitches for your cowl. If you would like the striped one, I changed colors every 14 rows. You can, however, change colors every 7 rows or even every 28 rows if you wish. It's completely up to you. Here is what your cowl will look like once completed. Next, you will need to cast off or bind off to finish your project. After you are completed, be sure to cut the yarn at least 18 inches past your work. You will need this long tail end to sew your seam. Now, it's time to weave in all of your ends, except that one for sewing the seam. The advantage of the solid color cowl is you will only have 2 ends to weave in. However, with the striped one, you will have quite a few ends. But it's good practice for you. Use the same method as I showed you before, and be sure to weave the ends in on the back side, or the side that will touch your neck, so that it will not be seen. And trim the excess yarn. You can, if you want, just leave the scarf as a traditional straight scarf. However, if you want to connect it into a cowl ring, use that 18 inches of yarn that you left from the tail end. Place the 2 side ends together and go back and forth with your yarn needle and yarn to sew the seam closed. You may have one blue and one green side, depending upon how you did your stripes. Feel free to sew on buttons as decorations. And here is your finished essential beginner cowl. To view this video in other languages, click on the closed caption link on YouTube and turn on subtitles. From there, you can choose from over 100 different languages. I hope this video has helped you. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Feel free to like and comment on this video. Check out the description or the info button of this video for more information. And please visit naztazia.com for more tips and tricks on creative, self-sufficient living.